Inshallah, we continue. And I might be a bit faster because I realize I'm behind schedule. Um, the number 4, the mental harm of digital devices and digital applications. The mental harm. This is a big one. Now, one of the first things that I'd like us to be familiar with is this concept of the what is called the dopamine hijack. So, in our brains is a hormone that is released called dopamine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created human beings, we call it that. And this hormone is what is identified with or quote unquote responsible for feelings of satisfaction, pleasure, relaxation. So let's say there's a hard day at work. My brain now will look for something that will calm me down, relax me, and chemically speaking, release that dopamine. So when I engage in healthy activities, such as a walk in the park, such as a conversation with my mother, such as performing 2 rakats of salah, pondering, and so on and so forth, dopamine is released. That the top part that you see there, there's a behavior that's done, and then I go back because I want to have that same a feeling of relaxation and so on. What happens with something, an activity that is addictive, an unhealthy, addictive type of activity, is that there is dopamine, this hormone that is released at incredible amounts through a different pathway. They call it neuronal pathway. The healthy activity through one pathway, and the unhealthy addictive type of activity that releases because of its nature, its speed, its its impact and so on. It releases dopamine also, but at a much greater level. What happens naturally when I engage in addictive behavior, and this applies to any addiction, whether it's alcohol, or drugs, or forgive me, pornography, or digital addictions, is the same thing that's happening in the brain at this level. So what happens is, now when I engage in an addictive behavior, I get this large amount of dopamine, and I want to, now when I want to look for relaxation, I go back to what's going to give me more of that naturally. I don't go to what's going to give me just a little bit, because now I've experienced this thing that's giving me this lot of dopamine. Now what happens is, over time, is those healthy pathways, it's like a highway, or it's like a trail. When you don't use it a lot, then shrubs grow, weeds grow, and it's no longer usable. It becomes weaker and weaker. The healthy pathway becomes weaker and weaker. And then I can't find any more pleasure in normal, healthy activities. And the other pathway becomes stronger and stronger. That's why it's called the hijacking of the dopamine pathway. Now I could understand physiologically why that young boy, and I'll give you a real example. His father came to this Abd after speaking about this and said, and he was so troubled, he said, I bought for my boy, he's 9 or 10 or something like that, I bought him a bike. And a bike is a big deal. At least when I was that age, it's a big deal. I had to save up for it. And then my mother, Allah yahfadha, she paid the other half, had to mow lawn to save up half the money for the bike. It's a big deal. It takes you you can go all over the place now. It's a big opening at that age. It's huge. He said, I bought it for him, and he's not interested at all in it. And he was devastated. How is this possible? What does he want to do instead? Play video games, be in front of the screen. Now, and this is a very good family. It's not because the boy is a bad boy, or this family is an evil family. No, it's because his brain has changed. He's physiologically different. His brain has been rewired, if you will. He's not trying to be bad, but he literally cannot find any more enjoyment in the normal activities that other people can find enjoyment in. So now you take him into nature, and what is he going to say? I'm bored. What is this? And what's the alternative? He wants to go back to the screen because he wants that heavy dose of dopamine. Now I understand why, for example, also in Muslim homes, a father would come and said, this is real examples, and say, my daughter locks herself in the room all day, doesn't want to speak to any of us. Not because there's any specific problem, but probably because, again, her brain has been rewired. So the real world cannot compete with the virtual world in its unpredictability and speed. When you play video games, you press buttons, you change reality. Things are very quick, very unpredictable. You get a ding sound when you advance in levels. Life doesn't work like that. You don't have that self, what is it called? Achievement, quick like that, in that way. Instant gratification. You don't have that in the real world. So naturally, the natural world, the real world, with its difficulties, with its challenges, with its things take time. I still remember that, when alhamdulillah one stopped watching, TV and so on, and years passed, and then I remember being on a flight and then seeing the video on. Sometimes they make everybody watch it. It's up there for everybody, and I just remember noticing, I'm like, what's going on here? The scenes were changing so quick. If you might have noticed this, the scenes were changing so quick. In the old movies, what happens? There's a cartoon that we used to watch in Egypt, a soccer cartoon. I won't say what it is. It's like the whole episode is one kick. He's kicking, he's thinking about it, and so slow. Why? What's happening? It's because they have to keep doing that because we demand more, we want more dopamine. It's not fast enough. So now the real world, life, riding a bike, sitting in dhikr. My son I can't get him to sit in a class for an hour, or forget an hour, 10 minutes. Why? Again, his brain has changed. It's like if I introduce to my children sugary foods, then when you come to have a sweet Turkish tomato, those small ones, it's gonna taste very plain. This is not sweet. Why? The taste buds have changed. Now, unless it's that heavy dose of sugar, it's not sweet. And sometimes you can even experience that, right? When you have something sweet and then you go eat something else that's also sweet, and you're like, what is this? It's not sweet at all. But something changed physically. So this point is very important. This next point, which is related. And that is that a lot of times what we say to ourselves is that, these tools, different tools that I use, digital tools, they're neutral. It's a tool. I can use it for good and I can use it for bad. It's just a tool. Don't blame the tool. I would argue that that's not entirely accurate. Why is that? Because that tool is not like another tool. A hammer is a tool. Have you ever seen anybody addicted to a hammer? They carry it all the time. When in their off time, they take it out and they fiddle with it. You ever seen that? Why is that not the case? It's a tool too, because it wasn't developed to be addictive. The makers of the hammer didn't do it to be addictive. They made it so that you can put a nail on the wall. But these devices, these applications are designed by thousands of behavioral psychologists, experts, PhD holders, that their main intent is to make you and make me addicted to these things. That's what they work on. That sound ding that you hear, that's not just a random sound. That's after many experiments and so on that they realize that that will get the person's attention. They have a summit, a yearly summit, they call it the Habit Summit, where developers and CEOs and people that different sell different products, they meet. It's called the Habit Summit. Why? Because they try to figure out together with all those experts how to make you and I addicted to their products and services. And at the top of that is the digital ones. Let's look at some signs of addiction. Signs of addictions, and ask myself, do I have these? And by the way, these again are signs of addiction not only for digital. These are the same signs for, again, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, other addictions. Compulsive use, you can't let it go. Dependence, used to fill my downtime. Whenever I have downtime, I go to my addiction. I lose track of time while I'm in my addiction. Falling behind on more important issues and tasks. I'm making irrational decisions. Something is very important, but I'm not doing it, and I'm engaging in my addiction. Why? Because it's an addiction. It's not just a tool anymore. Isolation and distancing from friends and family. If it's not accessible, I become irritated, I become anxious, and I even become violent. All of these are signs of addiction. Officially now, they have something called the internet addiction disorder. So it's something that, maybe you go to, inshallah, not you and not us, may Allah protect us and our families, and the doctor tells the person that, you know what, I'm sorry, but you have something called the internet addiction disorder. You need to go to a clinic. Probably in their case, they might put you on some medications and so on. And they have now digital detox, digital rehabilitation centers, because this is something real. Some people are becoming now physically sick because of this, because of video games. It's becoming very serious. And also related to this is our photo addiction. Some of us are addicted to taking photographs. It's an addiction. It's not about just taking a photograph for a purpose. It became an addiction. So I take pictures of everything. The most, silly things I take pictures of. Why? Because I'm addicted to that process. And that was facilitated by the fact that many of us are carrying cameras in our pockets all the time. That wasn't the case before. The camera is this big bulky thing. It's not with you all the time. But now, since it's in our pockets all the time, it's now developed an addiction. And they say, subhanAllah, some of the studies that, those who, because the argument is, I want to capture the moment. I don't want to miss this moment. They say those who capture the moment with their cameras are less likely to remember it than those who experience it instead. Think about it. There's a moment, a special moment. Where is it? Where's the camera? Quickly, catch it. It's going to go. I'm going to lose it. And I may catch it with the camera, but guess what? I lose it many times in my heart and in my memory, instead of experiencing it and enjoying that. We're not saying never take pictures, but we're just talking now about an addiction. Am I addicted to my devices? What do I reach for after salah? What do I reach for in downtime? What do I reach for when I wake up in the morning? If I check my messages first thing in the morning, I have news for me and you. وَلَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي, I'm an addict. If that's the first thing that I do in the morning, I'm addicted to that. I'm not talking about once, for example, there's something, a case here or there, something very important. No, but if that became my routine, my morning is that I check my messages, I'm addicted to messaging. And I need to get off of it. And we'll discuss, inshallah, how to help with that, idhnillah. What do I reach for in class instead of, learning? What do I reach for even in physical conversations? I'm speaking to somebody and suddenly, rudely, I disconnect because I enter the virtual world because a message came in and the person is speaking, and they say, what was that again? Because I'm an addict. how long, if I want to ask myself if I'm addicted or not, how long can I comfortably stay away from that thing that it's in question, that it may be an addiction? How long? A day? Can I do a day? Can I do a few days? Can I even do a few hours? Or do I immediately become irritated and troubled? Where is it? I need it. I may not say this, but inside of me, where I need it. It's like an addict to other things. Who took it? Who took up the charger from the plug? It's not working. I have to wait for 2 minutes till it recharges again. I can't handle this. Why? I'm ill. I need to change. I need to change. And again, وَلَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي. And I don't absolve my own nafs. The reality is that most of us are already addicted to our digital means and devices. But alhamdulillah, through the mercy, loving mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's something in the brain called neuroplasticity. The brain can change by Allah. That wiring that happened from the dopamine pathways being hijacked, the brain can heal. I can now find pleasure again in 2 rak'at of salah. I can find pleasure again in a conversation with my child. There's still hope. I can change. It's not permanent damage. Allah is Rahim. I can find sweet taste again in that tomato, that small Turkish tomato. I remember when I first came to Istanbul about 7 or so years ago, and one of the first things that I bought, I think the next morning, I saw those small tomatoes, right? Those small tomatoes, and I was, because I came from, I was living in the States, so usually the tomatoes taste like, we say in Arabic, soap. They don't taste, not sweet at all. At least the ones that I was buying, and I was blown away by this. But if I'm used to only, chocolate bars and Coke and so on, it's gonna taste very, not sweet or even sour. More mental harm. Let's look again another quote from the former president of Facebook. He says about his own product, and this is not only about Facebook. This is apply this to many things. It literally changes your relationship with society, with each other. It probably interferes with productivity in weird ways. God only knows what it's doing to our children's brain. Sometimes you wonder, it's like, why did you make it? If you don't know these answers. You don't know what it's doing to our children's brain. And some of them, this is probably one of them, they leave once they realize the monsters that they've developed. But what we'll learn is that these developers, many of them, they don't know what they're actually doing and the consequences of what they're doing. Not all, maybe some have ill intent also, but some, they just don't know. They're just, in a race for more profit. Whatever brings profit, that's it. And then when they realize, some with a conscious, they return back. Smartphones, social media, video games, texting, videos, all of this at different levels have been linked to depression, aggression, defiance, decreased focus, attention deficit disorder, symptoms, ADD, insomnia, inability to sleep. This is from the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry and other sources. Now they're starting to learn that it's linked. There's a link there. Before, maybe some of us, saw that, but now the studies are showing that this is a reality. Teen depression. Teenagers who spend 3 hours a day on social media double their risk of depression. See a teenager, in the most vibrant time of their life, can do so much, be so active. They want to change the world. When you're a teenager, so much depressed. Right. Alhamdulillah. Last 15 years, there's been a 150% increase in depression in teens. But it gets worse. Now, this is not only because of social media and because of devices, but they definitely have a role, as even the scientists and the experts say, as you'll see. Suicide rates. in the age of 10 to 14 increased by 57%, according to the US Surgeon General. Teenagers. In the local cemetery where I used to live in South Florida, a dear friend of mine, who I mentioned earlier about helping that young boy with his inability to concentrate, he told me that the cemetery there in South Florida, 20% of those that were buried last year in the cemetery were suicide. Muslim cemeteries. Muslim? 20%? And that ranges different ages, but there's probably teenagers as well in that. Another quote from the US Surgeon General, he says, or she says in this case, "We are in the middle of a national youth mental health crisis. And I am concerned that social media is an important driver of that crisis, one that we must urgently address." Now, these are the top, authorities in the U.S. medical, environment. And I just quote these as to because we weren't waiting for these quotes to understand this, but this helps us and it helps maybe some of us to realize more, how serious this is. Another quote now from the president of the American Medical Association. He says, "With near universal social media use by America's young people, these apps and sites introduce profound risk and mental health harms in ways we are only now beginning to fully understand. As physicians, we see firsthand the impact of social media, particularly during adolescence, a critical period of brain development." So now the experts are able to see this now firsthand, that it's because connecting with people is supposed to help us, but feelings of loneliness is increasing, and I have all these accounts and I have all these friends, and socially I'm declining. What's going on? And subhanAllah, just very recently, the Australian Prime Minister, mentioned that they will be introducing a ban on social media. Now, this is the Prime Minister, this is law now. A ban on social media for those under 16 years old. Can you believe that? Australia. أين نحن أيها المسلمين أيها المسلمون أين نحن? Where are we? We emulate everything, but oftentimes the good things is the last things we emulate. Many of the developers of these things in Silicon Valley, in the United States, they themselves, they say, as is documented, they banned in their homes the use and their kids using, for example, smartphones, and they send their children to top schools that don't use computers, laptops, or iPads. But what do? Islamic schools, where we're going to be behind? Get everybody an iPad, fundraise, get everybody in front of a screen. We don't want to be in those that know what's happening. They do the opposite of that. There's something that I call the zombie effect. If you've seen it before, in a teenager or in a child, and now unfortunately in adults too. The zombie effect. The person, because of the intense usage and interaction with screens, has become essentially what we used to see in cartoons and so on, a zombie. Have wires hanging from their ears, their face is always down, they're starting to develop, their back is curving. You speak to them, they're unable to hold a conversation. But you know what? In their online world, they're celebrities. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى السلام. We ask Allah to save us. Number 5. There's so much deception in this digital world. And those that came late, remember, I said, I'm going to repeat it again so that if you didn't hear this, let's not let our nafs say, oh, so you want us to live in the Stone Age, right? You want us to live in a cave. You want us not, they have no benefits, right? No, we already talked about that, and we're going to keep talking about that. That's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying or claiming. But know the harms, so that when I do interact, I can do so responsibly. So much falsity, fake news, ideas, algorithms, they drive, as we mentioned, fake news. Because real news, real news real news is not as interesting. Fake news gets people glued because it's extreme. Anybody here hear of the concept of deepfakes? Deepfakes. So a deepfake is technology that basically now not only experts, but it's becoming more and more available to others, and can take your picture or a few of your pictures, your video or some of your videos, and through that reproduce something it's a deep fake. It's indistinguishable from a real video or real picture of you. And you see examples, you won't be able to tell. What does that mean? What is the repercussions of that? Now you can take, through artificial intelligence and so on, you can take 3 seconds of a person's audio and then reproduce his voice, her voice, saying whatever you want. What does that mean when my son calling for help on the phone? Transfer for me money, please help me. It's him, it's his voice. What if it's my teacher, my mentor, especially my spiritual teacher? I see him saying that he said this, and it's not him at all. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he warns us of a time, as one text is reported, a time that will leave what we know for what we see. Things that we know axiomatically, but we see something that's different, and we leave what we know and we take what we see. In other words, be careful of that. Even what you see. This Dajjali culture and precursors to that ultimate fitna that will come to mankind. In that time, people will be presented with fire and water. And the text says that if none of us witnessed that, but he presented with fire or water, he said, take the fire, because the fire is actually water, and the water is actually fire. The jelly cultures, the precursors for that. And this dunya is already a deception. The natural world, even, it's already at some level, it's a deception. What do I mean by that? Is that as believers, we're supposed to see through the world to the akhirah, right? I'm supposed to see through the tree to the Rabb of that tree and the Khaliq of that tree. But if I'm absolved with the tree and the atoms and molecules, and I'm just in that, and oh wow, it's cool, and so on, I've been deceived. I missed the point. This dunya mata'ul ghurur, delusion. It's already a deception enough that I have to see through and see the reality, akhirah. Now I want to put myself in even deeper deception in the virtual world. Now I want to put things on that now I'm in a deeper deception. Am I going to be aware or as easily aware of the divine in that state? Or for example, in nature, looking at his creation? What's easier to reach my goal? Number 6. This is very important. This is something that many of us may not know. Whenever I'm online on any device, whether I'm sending a message, watching a video, seeing some news, using the GPS to get to my location, I'm under constant surveillance. To introduce this topic, let me just mention 2 things. Facebook, the company Facebook, everybody knows what that is. In 2014, It bought another company for $19 billion. You know what that company was? Anybody know? WhatsApp. They bought WhatsApp for $19 billion. Can you believe that? Now, WhatsApp, does it cost you anything when you use it? Why are they paying $19 billion for it? When there's no ads, you don't pay as a user anything. It has over 2 billion users across the world. Why did they pay that money? Keep that in the back of your mind. Google and Facebook and Google are the main culprits in this field, the biggest ones, but there's many of them. In 2019, it bought the watch that you wear. It's not a watch. It's called Fitbit. Why is Google buying Fitbit, that watch, that device that you wear, that tracks your steps and your heartbeat? Why are they interested in that? Google and Facebook, they pull your location 6,000 times daily, wherever you are. Pull that location. In computers you can do it. It's not somebody sitting down. You say, well, that's a lot of work. It's not work. It's all, it's all programmed. 6,000 times. Why are they interested in each one of your locations 6,000 times a day? That means like every, minor change that you make. And now there's the concept of the Internet of Things. Everything is going on the internet. Why are they putting refrigerators on the internet? Why do I need a smart fridge? Why does it need to have Wi-Fi? Why does my security system at home, my alarm, need to be online? And my the AC, the air conditioning need to be online? Now we say, because that's what we're presented with. Well, it's convenient. I can change the temperature for my phone anywhere I am. I can look at my camera, see who's there. Great, right? But there's something else that's happening in the background. Even car makers are connecting cars online. Why is that? The Don Butler, he's the executive director of Ford, or was. He says the potential to share data, both anonymized and personalized with third parties, represents the biggest opportunities. The biggest opportunity for a car maker now is data collection. What's going on? So, oftentimes in the digital world, we're presented with these free services. But the reality is that most of the time, nothing's free. You and I are paying for that with our private details. That's how we pay for it. The general rule online, is that if you're not buying a product or service, you are the product. You are the one that's being bought and traded without knowing. Under the guise, again, of ease, connecting people, and so on and so forth, there's something else happening. Now, what's the first kind of knee-jerk reaction to this? Sometimes to brush this off as not an issue. Even as a Muslim, what do I say? Sure, it's in some of our minds. It was in my mind too. What do I say? It's not. I want to say it's not a big deal. And what do I say? It's not a big deal because what? I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to. Take it. Watch everything. I have nothing to hide. I'm not doing anything wrong. Let's reassess that statement. Inshallah, you're not doing something wrong, but is there more to it? Because when they collect this data, what's happening? Why are they interested in it? They're basically making a picture of you, knowing who you are, predicting your next steps, discovering how you think, discovering your weaknesses and my weaknesses. What gets us? What are our blind spots? What are our shortcomings? What can we capitalize on in weakness? And let me say this, that as Muslims, no, we're not okay with spying. I don't just say, who cares? Let everybody see it. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا. Do not spy. And the ulama also categorize this as a kabira, as a major sin. Why? Because, we could think from the reasons that corrupts society. When private things are made public, it causes corruption. And think of this, if I want to, let's say I'm a person involved in da'wah lillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, may Allah make us from them, those who call to Allah. The more you know about the person you're calling, the better job you can do, right? If I know you that these are your likes, these are your dislikes, these are your strong points, this is your history. Imagine somebody in da'wah, they have all of that information. They'll be right on, right? Bitawfiq Allah. In the call that they call you to of good. And likewise for those that call to evil. It's the same thing. The more the person or the entity or know about you and I, the more they can affect us, impact us negatively. So no, I cannot be okay with giving them all my information. And you say, what? There's a privacy policy. The privacy policy, all those that come up, do you read those? Does anybody read them? What if you read them? You won't understand. And it's basically you're signing off a lot of the time to give them the data. And if you don't, guess what? Can't use the website. Can't use their program. Too bad. And what do? Our hands tied, we accept. Now the data, as you saw from this executive director of Ford, it's given to third parties. Who are these third parties? That's not always disclosed. We don't know who they are, that this data is communicated to. Now, what happens with that data? While I'm messaging, while I'm online, GPS, so on and so forth. Number one, it's used by certain parties and entities. Number one, by targeted marketing. So they can do a better job to sell me products, to ignite my nafs, to succumb to whatever it is that they put in front of me. And the danger is it's not only products, physical products that are being sold. What else is being sold? Ideas and values. You see what's happening to us as Muslims? A lot of times we're adopting values that are foreign to us. And this is part of it. Why is that? Why are they doing such a good job? Because I'm under a surveillance camera 24/7 that sometimes I choose to engage in on my own. So why arm somebody else to ignite my shahwa and my hawa? Why arm them? Why give them that ammunition? Number two, it affects not only targeted marketing products and values, but it actually affects behavior. They use that to affect behavior, to change behavior. Two published experiments run by Facebook. This is just an example. They showed that they were able to affect public opinion and change people's choices and voting and so on by they had an experiment, they have a group, and this is like millions of people that they do this with. It's not one or two. A group that they give them a certain news feed and a group that they don't, and they see the difference. It's an experiment. And they see that not only do they change them, but they change anyone in their circle also. See how much power now is in a few people's hands that don't have our spiritual and our rational usul. And it gets worse. In 2017, the Rohingya Muslims were killed, tortured, raped, and displaced in the thousands. This quote, by the way, it's not from a Muslim organization. This is Amnesty International's Secretary General. Thousands as part of Myanmar's security forces campaign of ethnic cleansing. In the months and years leading up to the atrocities, Facebook's algorithms were intensifying a storm of hatred against the Rohingya, which contributed to real-world violence. What does that mean? It means that because of the nature of these products and these services and how they run and how their algorithms prefer extreme, even false information, and sometimes, if not many times, these people don't care to stop what's happening, it can result in massive issues and most, horrendous issues. one of the Facebook scientists, he says the fundamental purpose of most people at Facebook working on data is to influence and alter people's moods and behavior. What happened to connecting people? I thought that was the mission. See now this Dajjali again culture, you know, what can we be exposed to and what change can be imparted just through clicks, just through somebody posting something, a click. Now they have access to it, all of us, right? How much change can happen overnight? No, over minutes. Think and reflect about what is to come of fitan in the future. Every time, and this is the conclusion of this, perhaps, is that every time I'm using a service online, be at least aware of what's happening backstage, because it may change the way I use things. Briefly here, this is a topic on its own. A quote or some quotes about artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is used in social media. It's used in all the things that we've been talking about also. But now specifically this. In a survey of AI researchers, 50% believed that there's a 10% or greater chance that humans will become extinct from our inability to control artificial intelligence. Experts in the field give a metaphor. Imagine that as you are boarding a plane, half the engineers who built it tell you there's 10% or greater chance it will crash, killing you and everyone else on it. Would you still board it? Now, we're not saying that this is what's going to happen. There's alamat of Day of Judgment. We're not saying that this is what's going to, but this is very telling in many ways. First of all, that the makers of this themselves, they don't know the probable consequences of what they're making. And many of them don't care. Why? Because they're in a race to make profit. The faster they can roll it out to you, the faster they can get you and I addicted to the screen, the faster more data is collected, the more profit that's made. And that's what matters for many, if not most. And no, artificial intelligence is not intelligent. It's not intelligent. It doesn't have aql, nor does it have or will it ever have conscious, because they use these words. It will develop consciousness one day. It's a machine. It's a program. And a program just does what a human would do, but just very faster, like a computer, like a car. A car, who made that? Is this monster that was? No, the human being, developed it and so on by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's a lot faster than him and her, could go a lot faster. Whatever I program it to do, that's what it does. It doesn't have any will of its own. So first of all, we must know that, so we're not deluded like materialists, because they're trying to convince us of otherwise. They have sci-fi movies now that make you think and feel that these are these creatures now that have will and think. No, it's a machine. It'll never be. It'll never be. But who has that ability to differentiate? A young child who clicks on, what is it? Siri on the laptop and asks it questions. How can you explain that to a child and to an adult over and over again? It starts developing in the mind and in the subconscious that there's something there, like a person that exists. And what does that do? And what are the consequences? Let me tell you some of the consequences. One consequence, now it's a bit extreme, but just to get a sense. 14-year-old boy in Florida was a basketball player, varsity basketball player, quit sports, isolated himself. Why? He's all day with a chatbot, a virtual friend on a certain platform where you can choose, actors and actresses of certain whatever they have, and you can have a conversation with them, and this supposedly this this character, and he it shows a character of a certain thing that he was watching. You know, a woman developed this relationship with this woman. It's not, astaghfirullah. See, I'm even saying, a woman. It's not a woman, it's a chatbot. Okay? But see how easy it is to slip? Started developing this relationship with this, chatbot. Very emotional, of course, illicit, indecent relationship with this machine. He discloses, some of his thoughts of suicide, of killing himself, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. And the parents of this person are suing this company. He was, they say, was encouraged by this chatbot. And from the last thing that he typed before he took his life, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, is that, this chatbot is telling him, come home to me. And he says, what if I told you that I can come home right now? And the last message is, please come home, my sweet king. And he dies. He kills himself. What is the effect of a soulless? I tell you this, and I'm the one who was having goosebumps. How far we've drifted, subhanallah, from basic reality and basic human morals and divine morals. What is the effect of having a friend that is soulless, has no soul? What is the effect of that? Remember, suhbah. We learned in the seminar about suhbah, right? Suhbah, there's a transfer of states. What about something that has no states? It's a machine. What does that impose on my soul? What about when the suhbah of a soulless teacher? Now you have in Muslims, of course, as usual, everything that comes, we have to be the first ones to quickly. We don't want to be behind. And I'm not saying that it's all wrong, but do we do the analysis, proper analysis first? Quickly add on in the program the AI Mufti. I've seen that. Add on the AI Mufti. Ask him, ask her any question you want. Quickly go get it. We don't want to be behind. What happens when that becomes my teacher? When that becomes the source of my information? A soulless teacher. And what happens is that I start to lose interest in real friends and real teachers, naturally. Because they'll tell you that, this chatbot doesn't get bored, You can speak to the chatbot all night long. They'll never say, I need to go to sleep. Come on, khalas. You can speak all night long. Teacher, you ask him anything, keep answering all night long. So better, right? Great. As one researcher put it, he says that, because there's a lot of benefits. No doubt, you're going to see and continue to see some incredible benefits of this. Incredible. Huge benefits. But look at this telling quote. He says, it doesn't matter though how high the scraper of benefits of AI assembles if the foundation collapses. Najis. Incredible advances. But if through that we're losing our foundation, then where's the building? Where's the skyscraper? Allah Akbar. Can't hear the adhan clearly. Dear, if not, we would have paused for that. Allah Akbar, Allah. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. لا شو. Allah. More spiritual harm. Finally, for this section, a lot of times I have khawatir. I have passing thoughts. Impulsive behavior. Before, what happens when you have an impulsive, kind of, or a passing thought, some crazy even thought that comes, shaitan, nafs, so on, or something silly. What happens? What are you going to do with it? At most, you're going to tell one person about it. I'm going to act it out in front of one person. But now suddenly I have the means to give my impulsive thoughts and behaviors center stage, global stage with the click of a button. And the nafs loves this. So something, a thought that comes, message, put it in a message, put it in a post, video, put it right away. And what happens? That goes to a server that is saved permanently. And you have no access to it. Perhaps even sometimes when I delete it. How many times has it happened to you? Happened to me a lot. That I'll write a message and then I'll go do something else. I'm like, oh my goodness, what was that? I hope they didn't see it yet. And I run back and I delete it. I have to check the checks. Oh, they didn't want. Oh, he saw it. Khalas. Too late. Khawatir, passing thoughts, now are given center stage. And I change over time. I mature, hopefully. Spiritually, mentally, I mature. Some things that I didn't mind people seeing 10 years ago, I would be crying tears to be seen doing that now. For example, let's say I change, but nobody has access to my past except Allah. And Allah is Al-Afu, As-Satir. He is the one who pardons. He's the one who covers. Human beings don't have that capacity to do that like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now that I have that picture saved of what I'm doing now, maybe now it's okay. It's okay for me now based on what I know now. But will it be okay in 5 years, 10 years, when I know more, when I mature more spiritually? Do I want a record of that? Do I want to put it on his computer and that computer and this server and that server? Don't be quick to save things. We change. In the past, what would somebody leave as a legacy? A well thought out book that they proofread. We just learned yesterday, Imam Malik, radiallahu anh, his Muwatta, his famous Muwatta, he spent 40 years revising and editing that and sharing it with other ulama and even students and so on to get feedback before leaving that legacy that all of us admire today. What about that message that I sent this morning? What about that post that I put? What about that picture that I took and posted about myself and my children and this and that? How much thought went into that one? There's some subtle, besides what we already mentioned, different spiritual harm that we should be aware of. I remember when the issue was just a cell phone, regular cell phone, which you call today what? Call it simple phone. Don't be too rough. Don't call it dumb. Simple phone. So some of us don't get upset. Simple phone. And at that time, though, not so long ago, I remember that was the struggle. That's I'm addicted to this thing. It's too much. I want to get rid of it. I want to use it less. I'm using it too much. That was a major issue for those that, were maybe Allah bless them to have teachers that teach them some principles that they see these issues. And, at that point, one was realizing that, there's some subtle spiritual harm that's happening here. For example, I'm finding myself that I am less in my sabr and less in my tawakkul and less in my dua. Before, what happens when a mother, her son is a bit late? What does she do? A pious mother. What does she do? Dua, sabr, tawakkul. Allah will take care. What do most mothers do now? Immediately? Call him now, right away. If he doesn't answer, has to answer immediately. Now, just let's be spiritually sensitive, for a moment. Nothing wrong with that. But overall, did I lose some things that I used to do, that I used to feel because of my usage of these devices or not? I just need to be aware of that. I'm not saying then, therefore, don't use it or don't call, but just be aware also of the loss that's happening. Sometimes I think of this example. You remember the Ansar, radiallahu anhum, when they were waiting for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. What did they do? Every day they'd go out in the heat of the sun, wait, look, is he here? Imagine the feel, imagine the emotions, imagine the beautiful ibadah that they were doing just to get a glimpse of him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And often I think, alhamdulillah, that they didn't have what? Live location. Because they would have been relaxing at home and they would have missed all of the fruits of that action. The conclusion is, dear sisters and brothers, in this section about harm is that we really don't know the extent of harm of these devices and these applications. We really don't know it. We don't know ad-darak. What do I mean by that? Let's see if anybody's online. We don't know ad-darar. What do I mean by that? Now think of our recent classes. Or anybody here, if you attended the seminary class. We don't know al-darar. Anybody? Jazakallah khair. Somebody got. We don't know all the harms. Alif lam. Remember we learned in Usul al-Fiqh. It's adat of umum. Alif lam istighraq. Al-darar. All. We don't know all harm. We don't know all harm. But the little that we do know is enough for us to modulate our choices and our decisions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, protect our children. May Allah Azza wa Jal make this gathering, inshallah, a means to help us moving forward, iznillah, in these times that we live in a way that's beloved to Him. Inshallah, we'll take a recess for Salah. Can we do about 20 minutes? Is that okay? I know that was the plan, but can we do 20? Just because I'm a little bit behind schedule. And basically the next section is now solutions. We can keep speaking about harms, but we have to stop. Next section, inshallah, and we spend some time together in about 20 minutes for us to perform Salah here, Salat al-Asr in Istanbul. Next will be simply about now practical, some general, some specific, bi'idhnillah, solutions moving forward. May Allah Azza wa Jal guide us. Sallallahu wa sallim wa barak ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. If you have questions, you can type them. And we'll also have time in the end, inshallah, for you to ask questions. Jazakumullah.